major problem on the planet, the practice of racism. I know we have quite a few listeners who are north of the border in Canada. Thought it would be grand. Our guest today, she was born in Canada and talks about some of those experiences as well as racism. Found her. She wrote an interesting essay at the Huffington Post. It's titled, "I'm White. Let's Talk About Racism." This was published at the end of September. Should be linked. You can check it out, read it online. Thought it had some interesting thoughts, comments, and some familiar patterns that I've seen from white people who talk about racism. She even quotes a few of the folks who've been guests on our program. Dr. Peggy McIntosh, suspected racist, been with us way back when. We went through lots of difficulties. I made an error. We had originally scheduled this program for a week ago, and I got confused about calendar dates. And then we were going to try again yesterday, and I didn't see the email to confirm that she indeed was going to join us yesterday. But third chime seemed to be the charm. Joining us live, she is an author, content strategist, and an admitted white woman. Our guest, Miss Shannon Fisher. Shannon, are you with us?
I am here.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your Wednesday evening and being patient with us. For our listeners, if this might be their first time hearing about your work, is there anything you would like to share with folks? Anything you think people should know about you and the work you do before we get started?
I keep a blog at truthfully.ca, and I contribute to the Huffington Post occasionally. I was a teacher for 9 years before I started my own business. Other than that, no, I don't. I'm a mother to an 11-year-old. That's about it.
Your blog again, truthfully.ca?
Yes.
Truthfully.ca, if you would like more information. What did you used to teach? You said you taught for 9 years. What did you used to teach?
I taught elementary kids.
Oh, okay. Right on. And the business that you started now, what is that relating to?
Writing content strategy, like you said. So just helping people figure out the content on their website.
Okay. Could you give just a bit more details? This is my first time talking to someone who is a content strategist. What are the details of what you do?
Okay. Well, I would come in at the beginning of a project and a web development project and talk about what kinds of content should be on your site, what doesn't need to be on your site, figure out just the whole system and the governance and who's going to contribute and how do you keep it updated. And if I came in later on the project, I would probably go through your website and see what's outdated, what's not helpful anymore, things like that.
Okay. Is part of how you evaluate whether you've been successful as a content strategist? Are you supposed to increase traffic, or how do you measure whether you've been successful?
Yeah, for sure. Ease of use of the site, how the people coming to the site are interacting with it. And I think for bigger websites, ideally, there would be less traffic on the helpline because the site would be answering their questions and it would be easy to navigate and things like that. The voice would be consistent. The tone would be proper depending on what the client was dealing with. If they're having a problem, are you being silly when they've found a 404 page? That's not maybe the best time to be joking with them. So, voice and tone is a big part of it too.
Fascinating. Okay, great. Glad to get that extra details. All right, let's want to move forward. We definitely on this program are just about candid, honest dialogue. That's the tone. That's what I picked up from reading your post on the Huffington Post. No pussyfooting on the program and just being as direct and honest as we can stand. Number one, you are a white woman, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We are very much about words and definitions when talking about racism on the program. You use racism in the title of the post that I saw that I first heard about you. I'm white. Let's talk about racism. What do you mean when you use the term racism? Like specifically, what is your definition for that term, racism?
Well, that's not actually my title. Huffington Post often changes the titles when they publish my posts, but I guess racism to me means white people benefiting from the oppression of others. So the ways that the white community oppresses the people of color. Oh, it's a good question. I've never been asked to define it.
That's big pattern, which I find that is fascinating, because it's been my experience being in school, and this is not even just talking about at the collegiate level. I recall in elementary school, my teacher would say all the time, don't use terms if you don't know what they mean. If you don't know what the word means, you shouldn't be using it because you can't be sure of what you are saying. And most of the classes that I've been in, they generally start with a glossary. This is the foundation of what we're going to be talking about. These are the terms. This is what they mean. The textbooks, they tend to have big, thick glossaries at the end of them, and making sure you know what these terms mean. That is fascinating. They have all these whiteness studies and ethnic studies disciplines, and so frequent. I mean, your response, I hear that all the time where people say, well, I don't have a definition of racism. I never thought about a definition of racism. I've even heard some people say, I don't even think having a definition is important. And I find that is a major part of the problem with regards to why we haven't made more progress towards eradicating racism. Because if you don't have a definition, I mean, you can say anything. Racism can be anything if it's not properly defined. But making sure I got what you said. You said white people benefiting from the oppression of others specifically being people of color. Did I heard you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So by your definition, go ahead.
I was going to ask how you would define it. Am I allowed to ask questions?
Absolutely. I have my definition, but before I share it, I just wanted to give one clarifier. So by your definition, only white people can practice racism. It's by your definition, you could not be a non-white person and practice racism.
I think you can have racial prejudice, but I don't believe that there's what people call reverse racism. I think there's just not the power behind racial prejudice for it to become systematic. So that's my thinking.
Okay. Important. And again, that just having a definition stops a lot of that. When people go off and say, well, I think everybody can be racist. I think non-white people can be racist. When you actually have a definition, that tends to clear up a lot of confusion about whether or not non-white people can be racist. The definition I use for the term racism, I use the term racism and the term white supremacy. I use them as synonyms, and I use the same definition for both terms. The definition I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think that's an accurate description of the system that we're in?
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering though, so the term dedicated, like I was, I'm brought up in a racist society, so I have racism in me, but I wouldn't say I'm dedicated. Like, I really hope I'm not dedicated. I'm not dedicated to oppressing others. So that I'm just interested in that difference. So does that mean I'm not racist if I'm not dedicated to it? I believe that I have seeds of racism in me that I haven't even exposed yet. So, there's a theory that all white people are racist because we were brought up in a racist society to believe that we are superior, right? So even if we're fighting against it, it's still in us. Does that make any sense?
It does. I would point out for folks who listen to the program how frequently our white guests pick on that word dedication and either have qualifiers about that or make sure they get in that they do not think that white people are dedicated to the system of racism.
No, I definitely think there are people who are dedicated. There are definitely white people who are dedicated. I hope I'm not dedicated. I'm really trying to examine my biases. That was the whole point of the essay.
Well, I would say number one, that I think also is a part of the pattern. I think folks who listen to the program, you can note if you've heard other white guests speak with us, where they immediately are talking about them specifically and saying, well, I specifically, I might be white, but I am not dedicated to the practice of racism, which I also think is significant, where the white person might agree with the definition, but they personally don't want to be indicted and included in that group. With regards to the word dedication, I would just say we're not talking about a minor tiff that non-white people and white people have been having for a couple months or a couple years in comparison to the shutdown. This is something that's been going on for centuries, at least. I think most of the people, when I talk about racism, there's no argument. This is a problem that's been going on for hundreds of years all over the world, where the same pattern, even if we're using your definition, white people benefiting from the oppression of non-white people, that pattern being global and centuries long, just that right there, that to me would be the very essence of dedication. And especially when the overall pattern is when non-white people resist, anywhere in the world where you find non-white people resisting and saying, hey, this is incorrect, we're tired of being mistreated, something should be done about this, the backlash that ensues, where white people in a variety of ways counterattack the non-white people, the people that they've been abusing for centuries, and say, no, we want to maintain this system of white supremacy, racism. We want it to be here. We do not want to see this fall, and they get busy making sure that it stays in place. To me, that is the very essence, that is the very definition of dedication. Do you see any flaws with that? Am I talking crazy? Is that not rational?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. For sure it does.
You, on a personal level, when you were talking about, you said you feel like you have, I think the way you said it was you have seeds of racism in you, and trying to examine that, being a white person born in a system of racism, white supremacy. Do you think it would be accurate to say that you, Shannon Fisher, that you are a racist? And the definition I use for racist, that's another one, having definitions. Definition I use for racist is a white person who directly and or indirectly, consciously and or unconsciously mistreats someone because they are not white. According to that definition, are you a racist?
Yeah, I guess I am. That's hard to say, but yeah.
That is in your essay, not being defensive, and even when it's, difficult and unpleasant to confront truth. That's a big part of what I think that's what we need, being honest. And really for me, that shouldn't be a shocker. I think for the most part, I think most non-white people, we're not accustomed to having white people be honest and say, yes, I'm a racist. I benefit, I practice, I do things all the time, probably things I'm aware of, things I'm not aware of, all of the above, to perpetuate the system of racism, white supremacy. I think most of us, we're not accustomed to hearing that, but I think, it shouldn't really be that surprising. As you said, if you're a white person in this, that's one of the rhetorical questions I ask all the time. I'll ask ask you, we can hear what your response is. What does it mean to be a white person? I think that's one of the most important questions any non-white person on the planet should really sit down and think about, spend a significant amount of time, journal, write, really think about what does that mean if we are indeed in a system of racism. So you said you are a white person. What does it mean to be white in a system of racism?
Does it mean to be white? Well, I guess it means that I have privileges that I haven't earned. It means that I see myself everywhere in the media. I am well represented, and I feel fairly comfortable walking around in this world. Because it is groomed to the white person.
When I hear white people, pretty frequently when they do speak about racism, it seems like the white people that do this are comfortable talking about racism and even indicting themselves as racist as long as it's about privilege, benefits, things that they get as a result of being white. Peggy, as I said, Dr. McIntosh, she's been on the program before, and just, I get all these goodies. I have a little backpack with all sorts of knickknacks and things that I get just on the basis of being white. And what I found that is not accurate about that is that it doesn't really get to doing. White people have to be doing. White people must be emphasized. White people are the minority on the planet. From the reports that I've seen, about 10%, maybe even less than that, of the global population. So there are not that many white people on the planet, period. They have to be doing things for the practice of racism to be around. And again, this is something that's been around for centuries. Are there specific things, going back to that question, what does it mean to be white? Are there specific things that you are expected to do as a white person?
That are racist, meaning?
Yes, things that are racist, things that contribute to the system of racism, white supremacy.
For sure, I'm expected to listen to racist jokes and not cause a kerfuffle.
Oh, lost our guest. We lost our guest. That's fascinating. We lost her at that crucial moment. Dialing her back now. You'll forgive the ring in the phone. Even the racist jokes, that would be super helpful. Can you think of some of the racist jokes that you've heard and or told over your life? Because I think they reveal a lot of truth about what racism is all about and what it means to be a white person. Can you share one or two racist jokes with us?
Well, I haven't heard a lot lately. I heard some growing up a lot. I mean, I lived in a community where there was a lot of First Nations people, so there was a lot of First Nation jokes. People would just, I don't know, I'm a little bit hesitant because I actually just read an essay by Jessie Lane Metz, who's a blogger. She's a black woman, and she actually pointed out how the Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack is a really harmful essay, which was great for me to read because I had read it thinking it was super helpful. And so she's talking about how, reliving that pain and hearing those things listed, and that woman just appropriating, feeling your pain and putting it in your words is not helpful. So I'm sort of hesitant to relive the racist jokes that I know.
We do not agree with that. If I can borrow from your essay, or one of the essays that you cited about tokenism, all black people do not have the same view, and I can definitely tell you, I could not. That's her view. That's fine. She's a victim of racism. She's a black female. That's fine. I do not agree. For me, that is one of the most informative aspects of racism, because frequently white people are not honest. White people do not reveal the truth about racism and about their own culpability in the system of racism. I have concluded that racist jokes are some of the few little snippets where white people give you very honest appraisal about what they think, about what it means to be white, what it means to be non-white. I have found that they are extremely informative. So I would be super grateful. Any racist jokes that you can remember, and especially since you grew up in Canada, because I've said this is a global thing. They don't just do this in the U.S. or Australia. It would be extremely helpful. And I think most of the people who listen to this program, they would agree. We would appreciate it if you can share any of the racist jokes that you can remember, because that reveals so much about the system of racism, what white people think, because we just don't get access. Most of the time when these jokes are told, there are no non-white people around, correct?
Yeah.
This is like giving some of the secrets of what white people talk about when there are no non-white people around. So if you could share, we would be very grateful.
Okay. Well, I'm not very good at remembering jokes at the best of times. So, one of the ones growing up was the song where you would push your eyes up and down and say something about you're Japanese, you're Chinese, or something in between. I can't even remember the song now. Often at any social gathering, someone would pretend that they didn't have teeth. They would put their lips over their teeth and talk like that, and that was supposed to represent a First Nations person. I can't think of any others. I mean, there was lots, but like I said, I'm really not great at remembering even good jokes. So,
can you remember like the gist or some of the punchlines of things that were said, even if you can't remember like the whole word for word verbatim what the joke was?
Just I grew up using the term Indian giver. I didn't even really think about that. I grew up hearing it and saying it until my mid-20s, and that's not a joke. But yeah, I'm really struggling to think of. Basically, I mean, the gist with the First Nations jokes is that they're drunk and they don't have teeth and they are of a low socioeconomic status. A very sweeping generalization. There's a lot of jokes in Vancouver about all the bad drivers are Asian people. And a lot of people start that off by saying, hey, I'm not racist, but... and... yeah, so those are the only things I can think of. I can do some more thinking and let you know, but yeah.
That would be great. I'll ask later if anything pops to mind. Yeah, definitely. Please share. How frequent would you hear these sorts of comments growing up, and what sort of company? Like, would you be around family members who were making these sort of jokes and comments? Was it friends, classmates, teachers? Like, how frequent and whom was saying these racist jokes?
Oh, wow. I hope my mother doesn't listen to this. I already have a strange relationship. Yeah, family. The First Nation jokes were almost told at almost every family gathering. Yeah, we had a big Punjabi population in the neighborhood as well. So those jokes would be told, and I can't even remember the gist of those, but something like they own all the 7-Elevens and just talking in their accent. So yeah, it was those in my childhood. It was at family gatherings that they would be told. I remember, anyways, I guess that's not important. I was just going to say I remember getting older and sort of calling my parents on it, but it just being laughed off. Like I felt like it was wrong, but it was just part of my family culture. So it wasn't until I got older that I started thinking, yeah, this doesn't feel right.
I'd say I think it's not just your family that is a part of the global white culture, the global culture of white supremacy, because it's not like that's some isolated thing that only happened in your hometown. If you, to the best of your recollection, like you said, when you got a little bit older and you felt like, hey, this is incorrect, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, and you tried to challenge this with your family, you said it was laughed off. Like, what do you mean? Like, what happened specifically?
Yeah, I think there would just be sort of a conversation about it's just a joke, and we're not actually, we would actually show love and kindness to those people, but so it's just a joke. Don't get so worked up. Like, that wasn't the actual conversation, but that was the feeling around it.
I would point out to listeners, at least some of the jokes that you talked about, mocking First Nation, the indigenous population in Canada, saying that they have no teeth and they're just drunkards, poor people with no teeth sort of thing. They have that quote unquote lower socioeconomic status as a result of white people terrorizing them for centuries. And I would say that that's a big pattern that I've observed in the system of white supremacy, where white people come and abuse and stomp on people and then laugh at them for being abused and stomped on. It's almost like they're justifying, like, oh, see, look at how downtrodden and lowly those people are, and making sure to distance the fact that we did this. We're responsible for this. We've set everything up that we possibly could to make sure that these people are in this position, and then we sit around and laugh and mock them. That seems to be a staple aspect of how white people behave worldwide, not just north of the border in Canada. As you said, that didn't really answer my question. And
like I said too, I write for a reason. I'm not great with the speaking.
Well, we appreciate you trying your best and not being defensive, as you recommend in your essay. And I'm pointing this out, and again, this is not even a Shannon Fisher thing. This is a major pattern amongst white people who allege, say that they are against racism, that they insist that this centuries-long war of racism, and for me, that is what racism is. I think it's very important that non-white people understand it as such. Racism, white supremacy, is war against non-white people worldwide, has been for longer than I can recall now. That this assertion that white people are doing this as a result of ignorance, or that they are unconscious, or that they have quote-unquote blind spots. And I do not understand how white people, at least in this area of the world, or anywhere really, but how is it that white people are ignorant or uninformed, yet they have been dominating, because we're really talking about power at the end of the day. They have been dominating, overpowering non-white people in all areas of people activity worldwide for centuries, but they are ignorant or unconscious. I just don't understand. I would ask again, what exactly? And I would also point out, I think that is very disingenuous. It might even be a deliberate act of racism on your part, to when you started your response to that question the first time, to go to your 11-year-old daughter. Because we're really not talking about children. When I'm thinking about racism, white supremacy, I'm not thinking about, 10-year-old Bobby, 11-year-old Susie. These white people, adults, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, what is it that you think they don't understand that is resulting in them practicing racism? What piece of information do they not have that is resulting in them terrorizing non-white people forever?
Well, I think that we've been brainwashed to believe that we are superior, and that's our rightful standing in society. And until something triggers us out of that, we're not going to examine it. And my other answer would be, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
But your essay, it seems you and many other white people, you all seem pretty confident that there's just some piece of information that white people don't have, even though you said you don't know. You don't know what it is that they're ignorant about or what they're missing. But it seems you all seem pretty, if nothing else, consistent in asserting that white people are ignorant about something. That is strange to me. If I'm going to insist that somebody is doing something and what they're doing is the result of ignorance, I would think you should be able to point out pretty quickly what it is that they are ignorant about, and you should be able to supply that information and see a change in behavior. With white people, if we're saying that, well, the problem is that they just don't see non-white people as humans, or they've been brainwashed, once you present this information, you should see a change in behavior. I haven't seen that from white people. If anything, I've seen a repeat of what you said you're seeing, where the white people get defensive, where they're resistant. They still cling to this belief that white people should dominate, non-white people are inferior. The same thing that you said you got with your family members growing up, where they didn't really take your opposition to the racist joke seriously. They just said, oh, this is no big deal, and moving forward. That's what I've seen consistently. To me, that doesn't strike me as a group of people that are ignorant. That strikes me as this is what we want to do. We'll see if folks have any questions they would like to ask Shannon Fisher. The number to dial is 760-569-7676. And the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you have questions. Number one more time, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943#. We'll get some of the folks that dialed in, and also reminder to Shannon, if anything comes to mind, either racist jokes and or if you think of any of the ways that you have practiced racism, things that you've done specifically, even omission, I would think for me it would count if you have been in the company of white people and they have been practicing racism, whether they did something directly to a non-white person or whatever the case may be, and you didn't do anything, that would count too. That would be an act. Hey, I saw a criminal activity occurring and I didn't intervene. I didn't do anything to stop this. I just rolled along with it. That would count too as an act of you doing something to practice racism, white supremacy. So if you think of anything, definitely would like to hear that before you exit the broadcast. Lashes, if you had a question for Shannon, your line should be open.
Hi, good evening to you and your guest. My question is to the guest. Would you say practicing racism, white supremacy requires dishonesty and the act of deception in order to maintain it?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Would you say practicing racism, white supremacy, requires dishonesty and the act of deception in order to maintain it?
Well, I would say that if you're practicing, you're probably lying to yourself about what it means. That it's right, that it's your right, that no one's getting harmed from it. Yeah, for sure there's some lying, some deception. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Do you think racism, white supremacy is white culture?
Yeah, I think it is. It's baked into being white.
But you said about becoming more educated about racism. How can that be if racism, white supremacy is white culture, therefore white people are already educated about it?
Well, there's so much I don't know, though. There's lots I don't know about the history of racism. There's lots I don't know. I don't have a large network of people of color, so I haven't had the opportunity to really hear about the ways that it's affected their lives.
No. This has nothing to do with people of color as of now. I'm just talking about amongst white people themselves, how they work together to practice racism, white supremacy, which is white culture.
Okay, so ask the question again. Sorry.
You mentioned how white people need to be educated on racism, white supremacy. I said, why would that be necessary if white people are already informed and educated about racism, white supremacy? That just doesn't make any sense to me. You're being educated on something that you're already knowledgeable about.
Well, there's all kinds of appliances in my house that I use on a day-to-day basis, but I have no idea how they work. I have no idea what's really going on with them. So there's lots I could do to educate myself. Just because I'm part of a system.
Continue, ma'am.
Yeah, just because I'm part of a system doesn't mean I completely understand its history or how it works or the ways it's affecting other people or what I can do to counter the system.
Thank you very much. That'll be all.
Just that I have other things I want to get to as well, but just that education piece, it really burns my grits, just because it just doesn't make sense. I think Lasha said that it makes no sense. I feel like white people, this is a group indictment. This is not anything that is exclusive to Shannon. This is a group indictment. I feel like white people are being deliberately, consciously, willfully deceptive, and I feel like it is a deliberate act of racism when they talk about racism and they say, well, white people just need to be educated. That's the problem. We can go your area in Nova Scotia. Those white people who were hanging a black figurine, they lynched a black figurine on the job. In my view, that is not ignorance. That is not... We just need to get some sensitivity training. And I was glad to hear that the black people in that situation, they even said, that is foolishness. We do not need sensitivity training here. We just need consequences. Treat this like you would any other crime. And that's another thing. If we're just talking in the language of crime, when a rapist rapes a female, they don't say, well, we just need to have education. This person just, they're poorly educated. They're ignorant. We just need to give them a few classes and that'll correct this problem. No, this is a crime and we just get to the punitive acts. This person needs to be punished for what they did and maybe even excused from the rest of humanity. If they cannot behave in a civilized manner, then they just need to be removed from having contact with other people. That's the way that you deal with any other crime. I mentioned Miss Cromwell, the black female who also was having workplace racism, but then after she stood up to that, she had the word nigger spray painted on her car. In my view, that is not ignorance. We don't need to get the racists who did that and say, well, hey, you all just need to be educated. We need to give you a class about the history of the word nigger. And I mean, no, not at all. In my view, they know exactly what they're doing. They're not misinformed. They're not unconscious. That's not a blind spot. They are deliberately practicing racism. You are treated like any other crime. Even if we went back stateside, I'd go with Rosa Parks with the bus boycott. The white people who were practicing racism with regards to where black people could sit on the bus and just the whole apparatus of the busing system in Alabama, Birmingham specifically. This is not about education. They didn't solve that problem by rounding up all of the white citizens and the white employees at the bus station and saying, we're going to take a class and teach you the history of buses and teach you the history of black people. And they didn't do that. They just said, hey, you're mistreating these people. We're going to stop doing that, period. We don't need any classes. And that was another one. There was mass resistance on the part of white people. But in my view, that was not something that was solved with education. You just say, hey, we're not going to mistreat people anymore, period. I think pretty consistently, white people, they just confuse non-white people and saying, well, somehow white people are ignorant and they just don't know. That's not the case at all. They are just dedicated to practicing racism. I had things I wanted to move forward, but I'll stop to give Shannon an opportunity. You can comment, and please let me know if I'm saying something that's crazy, because I'm not an expert on racism. I'm non-white victim. If I'm saying anything that doesn't make sense, or if I'm, being illogical, let me know.
No, I'm wondering what you think needs to happen for white people to stop being racist, to give up their power.
Oh, I don't think they're going to. It's very simple. They're not going to. It would be the same thing I said. Anyone, you understand this. If you have been in charge, you see this played out even amongst children when they're playing. If someone is in a position of power, even when children are playing, very young children, 8, 9, 10, if they're in a position of power, if they're playing PlayStation and there's only one controller, the person who has the controller, he might not want to give it up. Even if it's his brother, even if it's, if it's a female and it's her brother or her sister, they might not want to give up that controller. Oh, I'm enjoying the PlayStation. I don't want to give it up. That's human nature. With white people, they do not want to give up the controller. They've been doing this for a long time, and they enjoy practicing racism, and they benefit from it. It's exactly with the PlayStation. It's enjoyable. I'm in a position of power and I enjoy this. For white people, as you said with the racist jokes, white people have fun terrorizing non-white people. That is obvious. I think that's something also that we need to be truthful about. All these racist jokes, there are thousands of them. There are whole books written about this. White people enjoy.
So then do you have any hope? Like, are you speaking globally? Do you have any white friends that you enjoy and you see them making a difference day to day, and who you think are really doing the hard work of uprooting the racism in themselves? It just, the picture you're painting is so bleak. I just wonder if you have any pockets of hope or goodness in your life, in your personal life.
With regards to white people, no.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. That's very quick. I have seen no evidence, and really I would say, this is not an indictment of you, but I would say it's white people like you. When I started this work, with regards to really seriously thinking about racism, studying what does this mean, even getting a definition for racism, and really being scientific about this, I had quote unquote white friends. I had white people that I was around, and they read Timothy Wise, they read Dr. Peggy McIntosh, and they talked about white privilege, and they went to the white privilege conference, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have got some cool white friends. Yeah, they are down and they're doing the work, and yeah, they give me, if we could just get more white people like them. When I started to say, well, wait a minute, you all are practicing racism too. They had the same response that you have seen, where they got defensive, and ultimately it just got very tacky, very terroristic, and they looked just as racist as Bull Connor or any of the other white people that we typically throw under the bus, Rush Limbaugh or Glenn Beck or any of the other white people that we say, oh, this white person right here is racist, but not the rest of us, just this individual white person right here. I have just seen, and it goes back to that question that I said, what does it mean to be white? Once I thought about that, and I had examples in my face of white people that I thought were rehabilitated, had been redeemed. I thought these were the white people that I had some hope in, and I just kept, what does it mean to be white? And I saw that evidence more and more, even my quote unquote white friends, when they were trying to dissuade me from studying racism, white supremacy. You don't need to do this. This is a waste of time. There's always, just like, hey, why would you say that to someone who's working against a problem that we agree? You even said that your parents are racist. This is my quote unquote white friend. You even said that your parents are racist. So why would you try and dissuade a black person from trying to counter racism? Why would you do that? I've seen this over and over, and it just got to the point of saying, no, white people, as I say in my definition, they are dedicated. They're not giving up the PlayStation controller. I understand that. I'm not sad about that. It is what it is. I understand that. I do not have white friends. I do not encourage non-white people having white friends. Racism, white supremacy is war against non-white people. I don't go out and name call white people when I see them. I'm courteous. I think I've been courteous to you the time that we've been speaking on the program today. I'm courteous, just as in the Civil War. You would have General Lee, General Grant. They would be courteous. They would have meetings sometimes and sit down and talk. But they understand we are at war. I understand that as well. And I don't think this problem is going to be solved by depending on white people to give up the PlayStation controller. That's not going to happen. Non-white people are going to have to get a much better understanding of what it means to be white, what racism, white supremacy is, and then just go about the business of ending that system. And I think a lot of that just comes down to really getting a more accurate understanding of racism and what it means to be white. It's very simple. Has any non-white person that you can recall, has any non-white person ever accused you of practicing racism?
No, I have a friend, a black friend, who as I've been thinking about this stuff lately, I've been asking her a lot of questions, and she's talked to me about, not existing to educate me or white people. So, I think indirectly that was calling me on making her the spokesperson for people of color.
Outstanding. I'm sad to hear that you have a quote-unquote black friend, but that is outstanding. I say that all the time. We should not be in the business of educating white people. They are not ignorant. If anyone is ignorant about racism, it is black people, non-white people, victims of racism. White people are not ignorant about racism. How long have you had this black friend?
2 years.
Have you ever told her that you're racist?
I have had conversations with her. I'm trying to think. I've said it to white people lately in terms of my article. I've said, we're all racist, but I don't think I've actually said the words "I am racist" until your show tonight.
Not surprised. So, do you think she views you as a racist?
I don't know. Maybe I give her false hope. I'm not sure. I would have to ask her. I suspect she does. She's very well read and thoroughly thoughtful, and so I suspect she's thought about me that way. But
as a
I
racist?
can't speak for her. Yeah. Yeah. But maybe one she loves.
I would encourage everyone to ponder the logic of that. Black people in a system of racism, white supremacy, being friends with a racist and loving a racist. Just ponder the logic of that, and is that moving us in the direction of solving this problem? I think I can recall too many examples from the plantation days of slaves loving their slave master. It has not solved the problem, I don't think.
So what about someone like me who I say openly that I am interested in examining my power and privilege?
I would go exactly to the last word that you used, privilege. I've said consistently. I think Dr. Tommy Curry, he did a great job. He was a guest on the program on Monday, black male, professor at Texas A&M, and he talked about how talking about white privilege is not revolutionary. It's not radical. It's really stating the obvious. He amounted it to proclaiming 1 + 1 is 2. That's pretty obvious. I mean, that's not really saying anything. There are lots of white people like you, or I won't say lots, but there are a significant number. It seems to be a growing number of young white people who allege to be working against racism, who write books, do essays, blogs, give talks, go to the white privilege conference. Some of them who make a nice bit of money going out and doing this work to give the appearance that they're working against racism. But I would point out a lot of the things that I've talked to you about, just talking about how you can get bandages that match your complexion and how you're not followed around when you go to stores, and how when you go to school, people don't assume that you're there because of affirmative action, etc., etc. To me, that's not really doing anything to work against racism. You're not even revealing how you practice racism, as was demonstrated earlier on this broadcast. I don't really view that as anything other than, in fact, I think it does several things. I won't go into detail because I'm not in the business of trying to overly inform white people. But I would say one of the main things, since we talked about this already, you give a false sense of hope to a lot of non-white people. There are many non-white people who see people like you and think, see, there is one good white person. Shannon Fisher, she has given me hope that white people can be redeemed. That right there is poison to solving this problem, because it just does not give an accurate understanding of racism and what it means to be white. Non-white people who are confused, victims of racism, they will see you, they will see the work that you're doing, they will not think of you as a racist. At least from the post that I read, you did not identify yourself as a racist. I haven't seen everything that you've ever written, but I seriously doubt that you come out consistently and identify as a racist. You might identify as someone who's white, who benefits from white privilege, but that is way different from saying, I am racist, and let me itemize the different ways that I practice racism. That is what non-white people need. White people, white equals racist. As you said at the very beginning, if you are a white person, you're going to have those seeds. You have been born in a white supremacist culture. That is the operating system that you have for the universe. That's the way that you're going to think and function as a racist. That's the understanding that non-white people need, not I am a white person who has white privilege and I'm out here fighting the good fight. That right there, in my view, is poison for non-white people. It retards our ability to honestly understand this problem and work to solve it. When people see folks like you and others, it's not like you're the only one doing this, but I think you all represent an extremely dangerous element for a variety of reasons. That's just one of many.
So, what's the answer then? Like, if we're dangerous, if we're giving people hope, dangerous hope, or a false hope, then what should we be doing instead?
If you're talking about you as a white person, I think some of the things that you can do: reveal truth, identify as a racist. I would put that at the top of the list. Anytime that you open your mouth to speak about racism, you should begin with, I'm Shannon Fisher and I'm a racist. And you can talk about all that other malarkey about, oh, it's hard and I feel guilty to explain that. Revealing truth. You talk in your essay about being a quote unquote white ally, whatever that means. I think we need white people who can be honest, if anything, if such a thing even exists. We were talking before about the ingrained deception. Just identify as a racist. That would be huge off top, and explain that and make sure that non-white people keep that in mind. Whatever else you're doing, whatever you're talking about, if you're doing movies and films and blah, 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 hey, I am racist. And whatever I'm doing, it could just be another aspect of me practicing racism. Make sure that you keep that suspicion in the forefront of your mind with me and any other white person that you are talking to, that you're reading, that you see, regardless of how good, whatever they're saying, regardless of how good it sounds, how good it looks. If they're white, you should be thinking this person is probably racist. That would be phenomenal. You can support non-white people as well if you want to give them money. I'm sure it's a variety of things that you could think of to do to support other non-white people. But identifying as racist and making sure that non-white people think and get that in their head, white means racist, that it's no way you can have a white person who is not racist. If you think that's true, that would be phenomenal. Not that, and again, I'm not really in the business of encouraging. I just don't expect that. I haven't really seen that white people are going to do this. The vast majority of white people that I've talked to, that I've seen, that I've observed, they're just not in the bit. They're dedicated to preserving the system of white supremacy. So I don't really invest a whole lot of time in, telling white people to do this or to do that. Like I said, you can find non-white people to invest if you want to give them some money. You're a white person. You have easier access to financial resources if you want to invest and try to help them that way. But, I don't have high hopes with regards to white people doing a whole lot to disrupt their system that benefits them so much.